Oh, hello. As I'm sitting here drinking my morning coffee next to a fire, listening to the music of the river, I like to meditate reflectively on the things I can eat out in the woods. And I don't always eat edible mushrooms, but when I do, I like to eat the ones that won't kill me. So, follow me and I'll introduce you to one.
Sherlock's excited about it.
Move aside, Vanna. So if you can come in as close as you can, this is a red chanterelle or a cinnabar. And when you see them growing like this is they're pretty easy to identify. There's not a lot of things to confuse them with. If you see this really kind of wrinkly orange or sometimes reddish mushroom growing in a little cluster, this is not the most impressive cluster. This is just the one nearby. You've probably got a cinnabar. And we're going to eat these, so I'm going to go ahead and pick them. I'll pinch them off, and there's poison ivy right here, so I'm being very careful not to touch that. And you do have to be careful when you gather mushrooms, because sometimes they can take on the qualities of poisonous plants. So if I saw like a lot of poison hemlock here or something, I might skip that patch. I'm not too worried about poison ivy because it's more of a touching thing. So when we cook this, I'm not too worried about it having an effect on us. So follow me back up away from the river, and I'll go in more detail about how to identify these. I found this hat hanging on a bush, by the way, so I'm giving it a try.
Isn't it a kid's hat?
Because I care how I look. So, when you take a chanterelle of any kind, one of the characteristics of a chanterelle are these veins underneath. If you look closely, and hopefully this will show up in the camera, the veins are kind of thick, and you'll see some forking. Some of them fork.
Blurry.
Yeah, you especially see it near the ridge. And this is true of cinnabars and all chanterelles. There's one look-alike for the cinnabar that has sharp-edged, unforking gills. So really try to notice those forks. I think you're getting too close. Yeah, there we go.
There we are. See if I can zoom in from that location.
Yeah, so they're almost like wrinkles, full wrinkles with forks instead of like sharp-edged gills. So that's one way you can be certain, but it's a pretty hard mushroom to mistake. And like I said, sometimes they can be more flat, more wrinkly, but this kind of wrinkly orange shape that's in a small cluster. There's not too many things that look like that. But if you're just starting with mushrooms, this isn't one of the what they call the foolproof 4. So maybe get some practice, because you could mistake anything with anything else depending on your level of experience. But, yeah, this is the cinnabar, and it's got a peppery, kind of spicy taste. So we're going to chop it up, and we're going to cook it up in our rice and beans this morning, or maybe our grits. We haven't decided yet.
Do you know what type of environment it grows in, or does it grow pretty much in any environment, or...
I'm not sure. I see them in clusters along the trails, but that's probably because I'm walking the trails.
Right.
And like any mushroom, when you start seeing clusters, it's kind of the season for them. So we've run into several clusters on our walks here in the North Carolina mountains. So they're really common. I run into these all the time, the cinnabars. And yeah, before you start picking mushrooms, if you don't have much experience, definitely learn the amanitas. 90% of all mushroom poisonings are from people eating an amanita. So go ahead and look that up, find out what an amanita looks like. The chanterelles are quite different. So this is a mushroom I feel pretty confident with. I feel confident enough that I don't need to look this up in a field guide to know it's a chanterelle, because I know that general look is almost always a chanterelle, and the next thing I look for are the gills, and that's the confirmation. So this is a cinnabar chanterelle.
And one other thing, you said we were going to cook it up. Do you need to cook up chanterelles, or Do you recommend cooking up all mushrooms, or?
Somebody once told me this is the one mushroom they don't always cook. Sometimes they'll chop it up in a salad to add a peppery taste.
Huh.
Personally, I always cook mushrooms because cooking it makes it more digestible if it's a little sensitive to your stomach, depending on who you are as an individual. And if it has parasites, sometimes bugs can live in these, so the mushroom might be safe, but the parasite could make you sick, so it kills the parasite. So the safest route is to cook any wild mushroom. And I'm not a big fan of just store-bought mushrooms, but wild mushrooms, my God, what a plethora of different flavors. There's so many different scents and flavors. They're really one of the highlights of foraging. And when you pick a mushroom, always try to get the base of it. Look at the base, because that's one of the ways to tell an amanita. There'll be some kind of cup or nest at the base, so you want to see how the mushroom is coming out of the ground.
Oh, that's a really good example of the forking veins and that one on, yep, go on.
So thank you, Cinnabars. Hope we have a delicious breakfast.
Indeed.
And if we are alive long enough to post this, I was correct in my identification.
Oh my God. Thank you, Cinnabar.
Bye.